You're listening to Real Life, No Filter, where raw emotions and real moments take center stage. No masks, no filters. Just honest stories about life, love, and everything in between. Get comfortable. We're about to begin. Sarah ran through the rooms, hastily gathering things that came to hand. Her breathing was ragged. She was very nervous. Just now, the chief doctor of the clinic had called, asking why she had suddenly decided to leave so abruptly. Of course, they let her go immediately, but questions poured in from everyone. But she couldn't explain anything right now. And anyway, she didn't want to tell anyone anything. Sarah met her husband when she was doing her practical training at a clinic. Feelings surged unexpectedly, and they didn't resist them. They got married. After she started working at the outpatient clinic, they decided not to have children yet. Sarah had only just started working, and then somehow there wasn't time for children, although Sarah hinted about it to her husband. Sarah got lost in her memories, and tears of hurt and anger immediately appeared in her eyes. And it was all because of her friend Lisa. Yesterday she found out that Lisa wasn't a friend to her at all. Sarah worked part-time at the clinic, staying on duty at night. And yesterday she was supposed to stay for a full day, but her shift was cancelled, and Sarah happily rushed home to surprise her husband. But when she quietly entered the apartment, she heard a woman's laughter. "You surprise me every time. I honestly don't know what you'll come up with next." It was Lisa's voice. And Sarah's husband replied to her, "You know, you always motivate me. I think about you every minute. I want you to be happy. I'm ready for anything, so you won't be disappointed in me, my dear. You are my cosmos. I'm ready for anything for your smile and kiss." Sarah slowly backed away towards the front door. She had heard enough words to understand what was happening. The sound of kissing was audible in the room, and Sarah didn't want to see what was going on. She quietly left the apartment without locking the door behind her. She spent the night at the clinic without closing her eyes. And now she had come home to pack her things. She wanted to disappear, and during the night she had figured out exactly where. She had inherited a small house in the village of Zareknoye from her grandmother. Nobody knew about it, because Sarah had left the village many years ago to live with her father in another regional centre after her mother passed away. Only when her grandmother passed away did she go there for the funeral and learned that she had left the house to her. It was a decent little house that had been empty since her grandmother's passing all this time. Sarah decided to go there. All that was left was to gather the necessary things and documents. Nobody would find her there. She didn't want her husband or her best friend to know anything about her whereabouts. Let them think she had disappeared or that something had happened to her. "My soul is no more," the young woman whispered quietly. An hour later, she had gathered everything she needed. She stopped in the middle of the room, surveying the surroundings. She felt that she would never return here again. She had been happy here, and it was here that she had learned about the actions of the two people dearest to her. This place was no longer her safe haven. Now it was a dirty swamp where disgusting things had happened. Sarah felt nauseous, and she hurried to leave the apartment to go nowhere. 2 days later, she was already in the village of Zareknoye. Before getting on the plane, she threw away her SIM card and bought a new one. She didn't want to be bothered by calls from her husband, Lisa, or anyone else. If necessary, she would call the clinic herself to inform them whether she would return to work or not. But as she flew, she was increasingly overcome by the thought, should she give up her medical career altogether? The actions of her loved ones had pulled the ground out from under her feet, and Sarah didn't know what to do next. She only knew that she wanted to radically change her way of life to recover. Now she was walking along the railway tracks with a suitcase. She had arrived in the village of Zareknoye by bus, but there was still a long walk to her grandmother's house. A local resident had given her a ride, but only to the right lane, and now she was making her own way to the right house. When she finally arrived, her heart immediately felt lighter. She saw her grandmother's little house, which now belonged to her. Now she would hide here, and no one would hurt her any more. She opened the creaky gate and entered the yard. Sarah stood for a minute, then slowly closed the gate behind her, leaving all her sorrows and anxieties behind, and stepped towards a new, yet so unknown, life. 2 weeks later, Sarah gradually came to herself. During this time, she got to know her neighbours. They all turned out to be quite nice people. They helped her with the house, found workers who quickly tidied everything up. The furniture in the house was quite decent, and the yard was also quickly put in order. Sarah even started to smile, because she couldn't react any other way to the kindness of strangers. They didn't know her at all. She was a stranger to them. But in 2 weeks, they had done more for her than she could have expected. Her wounded heart was shedding tears, but the wounds were quickly healing from such gentle treatment. And something else happened that made her realize she wouldn't be able to hide her profession. She wanted to give it up, just become some kind of milkmaid or collective farm worker. She didn't know what else you could do in the village, but she intended to find out. But she didn't get such an opportunity. In the morning, her neighbour Mary, who had helped her the most with the house, rushed over. She was agitated and began speaking hurriedly. "Good morning, Sarah. Forgive me, dear, but I won't be able to help you today. I urgently need to go to the regional centre. My little one got really sick then. Her stomach had been hurting for several days, and at night she got really bad. She's constantly vomiting. She can't even drink. I'm a bit worried. And we don't have a doctor here. Since the last one left us, they haven't sent anyone else. I don't even know who to turn to. I'm terribly worried about her. She's lying there pale, breathing somehow heavily. Her eyes are wild." Sarah said anxiously, "She's dehydrated. She needs an IV drip urgently. She probably ate something bad, but she needs to have the intoxication relieved urgently." Mary threw up her hands. "Sarah, what words you're saying? Where would we get an IV drip here in the village? And even if we had one, nobody knows how to use it. Our villagers can't even give a simple injection. And you're talking about an IV drip. We'll take her to the regional centre. That's where they'll treat her, my precious child." Sarah immediately ran into the house for her medical bag. She had everything she needed. She had taken it just in case, although she hadn't intended to stand out here at all. She gave the girl an IV drip, and she immediately felt better. She was able to drink water. By evening, she looked quite decent. They didn't have to go to the regional centre. Mary was ready to kiss her hands. The next day, the whole village already knew that Sarah was a doctor. She couldn't hide her profession. Sarah realized that when the girl got better, she felt such joy. And she felt that only medical work brought her such pleasure, which nothing else could bring. And a month later, Sarah was already working at the local medical centre, which had been empty for a long time. None of the doctors wanted to waste their lives sitting in the village. But that's exactly what Sarah needed, to hide from her past life and be useful to kind and responsive people. Several months passed, and Sarah came to a call for a girl who had had a temperature for a long time. She was met by a man of pleasant appearance. "Hello, Sarah. You don't know me yet, but I've heard enough about you. My name is Paul. Please help my daughter." Sarah only glanced at the man, noting his beautiful eyes, but immediately pushed away extraneous thoughts. That's all she needed. She had, of course, been without a man for too long, but not to the extent that a single glance at beautiful eyes would drive her crazy. Take me to her. I'll examine the girl. 10 minutes later, she was already writing out prescriptions on a piece of paper. She has bad wheezing. I'll write down the name of the medicine for you now. You'll need to go to the regional center to buy it, and a couple of other medicines. And perhaps you could call your wife. I'll tell her how to treat the little one. I have a couple of secrets I can share. The girl will get better quickly. Silence hung in the air, and Sarah looked at the man with bewilderment. He was looking at her, frowning. After a minute, he said, I don't have a wife. I'm raising Christina myself. My wife, during childbirth. He fell silent, swallowing a lump in his throat. Sarah immediately looked at the fair-haired little angel lying in bed. Her blue eyes looked at Sarah so trustingly. Sarah felt her heart clench in her chest. How unfair life was. She had asked her husband for a child, but he didn't want one, probably because he was having an affair with Lisa. And Sarah had dreamed of a child so much. And here before her lay a girl who had never experienced a mother's affection. And it was so painful to encounter such injustice in life. Sarah looked at Paul again, and she felt an unfamiliar feeling appear in her heart. Perhaps sympathy, perhaps anxiety, perhaps an understanding of his pain. And she almost drowned in his eyes, which were looking at her so intently. You know, I'll come every day then. I'll do everything necessary myself. You just buy the medicine. And I'll make sure Christina gets back on her feet quickly. Yes, Princess. Sarah stroked the girl's head, and she smiled at her sweetly. Paul smiled too, and Sarah noticed how much the father and daughter resembled each other. I don't know how to thank you. How about I come pick you up every evening so you don't have to walk here yourself? The man suggested. Sarah wanted to refuse such kindness, but immediately changed her mind. She hadn't interacted with men for so long, and this Paul was so pleasant, polite, and his daughter was such a sweetheart. What bad could happen if he came to pick her up? She would ask him about the girl. She simply wanted to talk to someone other than patients and neighbors. Okay, I'll give you the address where I know where you live. Paul interrupted her and immediately fell silent. Sarah looked at him and saw something in his eyes that unsettled her. A handsome man. But there had already been one like that in her life, who had trampled on her heart. She already regretted agreeing to him picking her up, but there was no turning back. She had offered it herself. Time passed. Sarah was sitting on a bench in front of the house, drinking fragrant tea. Strong male arms embraced her from behind, followed by a tender kiss on her cheek. Sarah closed her eyes and smiled. My love, is it really your day off today? You are mine and only mine, Paul whispered in her ear. Sarah didn't have time to answer before Christina jumped off the steps with a squeal. Paul sighed. Or rather, not mine, but ours. Sarah smiled, remembering the events of the past year. It had been the most wonderful time, because she had met true love. Paul had melted her heart, and it turned out that he had seen her much earlier than she had seen him, and had fallen in love with her at first sight. His daughter's illness had brought them together. And it was also a difficult time, because she had to confront her past life. For Paul and Christina's sake, she wanted to put a definitive end to her past relationships and went back to where she had left her husband and former friend. It turned out they hadn't really looked for her. They were already living together, and signing all the documents was just a formality that needed to be observed. They did everything quickly. While Sarah was sorting out her affairs, Lisa wanted to talk to her, but Sarah didn't say a word to her. and her ex-husband didn't even try to justify himself, only saying that life was an unpredictable thing. That was the last time Sarah saw them. Now nothing connected her to her past life anymore. She could dedicate herself to the man she loved, whom she had met thanks to her grandmother's little house. She sighed, freeing herself from the remnants of unpleasant memories. She stroked Paul's hand. We still have so much time. I'll have time to bore you. You are my life. I love you, and I'll never get tired of you, the man said, holding her tightly in his arms.